happening.
So I was just trying to see if for you there was a specific thing that's making you fizz.
Mm,
So physical AI, I get it. It's the space we invest in a very similar way.
yeah.
It's that the layer that connects these hyper intelligent robotics and
Mm,
machinery into the real world, and there's a value layer there to be had. And it's the hard to digitize layer. That's the bit that you're talking about.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
bit that hasn't been done yet, and I get that.
Yeah.
But is there, and there might not be, but is there something below that for you where there's a niche or a layer we go, that's the magic spot.
Yeah.
And maybe another dimension here is Europe. So
Mm,
the US can be doing that. The Chinese are obviously incredible at dark kitchens, dark factories, whatever they're doing incredible stuff with robotics and physical AI. But maybe there's another layer, which is the European angle.
yeah.
Is
Got it.
there anything on your mind?
Yeah, really good question. So again, we kind of break it down into 4 different areas as just a mental model. So the first is anything that's kind of the infrastructure and the hardware piece, but that includes not just the physical robots and how you manufacture them, but it also includes things like new sensors or using hyperspectral imaging to do this, or it could be, we just invested in a wireless power company, for example, called Willow. So if I'm going to be able to deploy more robots, I need to be able to more seamlessly charge them whilst they're in the field. So that's the kind of the hardware infrastructure piece. Now, I'd say in Europe, I mean, look at the deep tech ecosystem that we have. You know, there is a lot of GPs like focused on that deep tech area, like new developments that will help the hardware ultimately get better, smarter, lighter, cheaper, etc. So that's the first area. We don't want to do too much stuff there. I think as VC, you don't want to be overexposed to that kind of hardware layer, but there's some really exciting stuff happening. Moving up from that is the software layer, which is, you know, the operating systems, the full software stack that people have used for a long time in robotics and making that smarter. The next piece then is the intelligence layer that sits on that, and that is a lot of world models, like people building the things that we need to build brains. Like for a long time, we've had this data gap in order to train these physical models. Like you need to gather that real world data. Like we don't have the internet to train on, so you need to train on the real world. So anything like, again, those are purely kind of software businesses, very technical businesses. And then finally, you then get to the vertical applications, right? And that could be agriculture, health, even consumer. I know Outsized have been looking at a few consumer robotics bets recently, for example. So then it's picking out what's the best vertical. Now, if you think about all of those 4 areas, I think as a fund, we're not going to say, oh, we only do this piece or that piece. I think it's picking the right, like, diversified balance across those 4 areas and then thinking about where we thrive in Europe. So if I pick those apart, I think hardware and the kind of the infrastructure, like the novel stuff coming out of the deep tech space, I think Europe is a good place to be hunting for that. Look at the operating system stuff. You know, there's opportunities there. It's maybe less exciting because there's less new stuff. Go to the intelligence layer. That's the first challenge because obviously you have all of these huge labs like World Labs. You have all of the big robotics companies that are building their own world models. But then we have people like Jan LeCun, who's building Amy in Europe. So I think there's maybe a few plays in there. And yeah, I think maybe in Europe, that's where the vertical opportunities come more into play, right? And how do you find those? All of the headlines in robotics at the moment are the big rounds for physical intelligence, world models, like all of this money getting raised. And the capital there is probably going to flow to Europe. But in the kind of the boring real world, we need to like deploy this in industry. I think Europe has the edge. Like we have a labor shortage. We have like pull coming from end customers who are realizing that they can even modernize their existing kind of their robot 1.0 kind of solutions that they have. Like those can get smarter. But then what's exciting when you add the physical intelligence and you add the decreasing cost of hardware, all of a sudden you can start building solutions, robotic solutions and